Well, would you look at this? We've got a new colour. I changed it up. Normally it's orange. I got bored of it. Now we've got this nice blue. So get yourself a light bar, people. It makes your shots more interesting. But it's been a while since we've done an editing tutorial. And yeah, I've got no shoots planned for this week for videos. So I thought I'd make an editing tutorial off the shoot I did last week of this $1.5 million classic Ferrari. This is so sick, man. But yeah, in that video, I made this certain style on the photos that made it go from this to this. And this is in my new preset pack, which is coming out soon. But I thought I'd just give you a teaser of how I actually did it so you can do it yourself as well. My new preset pack that's coming out has got 5 different categories of 5 presets in each one of those categories. So this is just in the extra section. And here you go. It puts it straight on there. And then you just adjust a couple of things and do a couple of adjustment layers to make it look even better. So I'm going to show you how to do it from scratch. And then I'm going to show you some of the little tricks that I'm doing with linear gradients and radial gradients to make my photos stand out from everyone else's, all right? So let's get into it. We start off with the basic adjustments. Exposure, I actually exposed this perfectly, if I do say so myself, in camera. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring the contrast up a little bit. Normally I pull contrast out, but because we want this to be World War II vibe is what we're going for, that like there's black smoke everywhere, like the floor's really dark, the grass is like desaturated and lifeless. That's what we're going for. So I'm going to bring contrast in to give it a bit more roughness. I'm going to pull highlights out because I don't want it to be shiny. I want it to be really dull and like miserable. So highlights are coming all the way out. Shadows, for now, I'm going to add them in. I could play around with these later when we start to add in other things. So yeah, shadows are going to come down for now to about there. And then what I do with the whites is I pull them to a place where it just makes anything that's got white in it, like the headlights, look at the headlights, nice and vibrant white, bit more dull grey. So we're just going to pull it, but where it doesn't affect too much of like everything else, like the sky is getting a bit crazy now. So I'm going to go about halfway. All of these adjustments, like every time I make stuff, I just move shit around until it looks cool. And then I just remember what I did to move it around. And then that's kind of how you learn Lightroom. You just move shit around. Blacks, we're going to go down with the blacks. Just trying to remember how I did this preset, to be honest, but yeah, I want blacks down because I want that roughness in the photo as well. We're going to go with a bit of texture and a bit of clarity. We're going to leave the dehaze, and then what we're going to do here is we're going to bring down the vibrance because we don't want any vibrancy really, so we're going to bring that down to about there. We're going to slightly desaturate it, but not too much, because I like to do this thing where I desaturate the whole image, but then I go to the individual colors later in the color grading and then boost those colors separately. All right, so just bear with me. We're gonna make this car pop here the most. So we'll desaturate that and the vibrance. Tone curve, I haven't actually used this at the minute, like quite a lot, but let's just put a little mini S curve in for the sake of doing it, because I feel like it does add the extra element. I like to add a bottom point in here, and I like to slightly lift the blacks as well. And then maybe I'll do it on the blue and the red tone. Yeah, look, there we go. Look, we can mix a little bit of orange in there. Not too much. Tiny bit, tiny bit, tiny bit, tiny bit. About there. Because I feel like that blue kind of gives it that metal, weird, green. I don't know. I think it works. We're not going to do any of the other colors. We're going to leave those. Now we get into the section that is going to affect the photo the most. So like I was saying, I desaturate the whole thing, then I go through and choose the colors that I want to keep. So definitely greens, piss off. The greens can go. We're going to go all the way to the yellow with the actual green color that is left, because obviously there still is some left. So we'll get the greens and we'll shove that right to yellow, because yeah, we don't want rich green grass, we want yellow vibes. And then we're going to get the orange and we're going to slide that to the more orange up as opposed to yellow, just to mix it in a bit nicer. We don't want purple in there, so we'll pull that a bit out. I'm just trying to make the greens and the oranges less green and orange, like more light colours of them, like pastel-y sort of colours to them. That's all we're going to change really, and then we're going to get the reds. What I like to do with the reds is I always like to pull them to the left, because it just darkens that red a little bit more and makes the paint look a little bit more rich. Like if I pull it here, obviously that's too much, that's pink. But if I pull it this way, it goes a bit orange. So I like to just pull a little bit of pink into it to mix in with the red, and it just darkens it a bit. But now is where we get into the selective colors that we can boost up. So we're going to get that red and we're going to boost that back up to a nice place so that red is nice and rich, but not too crazy, so it doesn't like match the rest of the photo, but enough so it's got a bit of life back in the paint. So I'm going to go about halfway. So we'll go about there. Obviously we've taken the greens out. We can move some of these round. I don't think I did much with these, to be honest. I can pull even more saturation out of the yellows, but then we get left with that. But we still want some life in the grass, so we'll go about there. I think that's all I'm going to do, to be honest. I'm not going to touch anything else with the colours. That's kind of the only ones I wanted to manipulate and the only ones that are really in the photo. Colour grading, what I like to do is just make sure each one has an opposite. I don't like to merge them together, so let's go like a cold vibe in the shadows, because we do kind of want that cold vibe. Let's go for a bit of a green tint across the mid-tones, a tiny bit. I like to do a tiny bit, and then highlights. Let's kind of go towards the orange a little bit, so we've got a bit of orange in there, and that should merge together nicely. So I just like to do 3 different points, and then they all normally sync up nicely at the same point. Kind of like the tone curve, but it's a bit different. We're going to come down. We're not going to I could add in grain. I didn't add in grain on the original preset, but you could if you wanted to add yeah, maybe we will this time. Actually, I didn't in the last one, but we'll add a slight bit of grain. We'll up the roughness and the size, and we'll add a tiny bit, and then this is the main bit. Some people do this first. I like to do this last. So this is the camera calibration. If you don't know what this is, this decides how your camera sees colors. Like we see blue as blue, but you can tell your camera to see blue as green. Do you know what I mean? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to move these around till we're happy with them. That one doesn't really need to be moved. Yeah, that one. So we're going to pull that left, more orange, and then the blues. We'll go orange as well, and then we'll desaturate both of them too. And yeah, we'll desaturate all of them to pull them all together. So you can already see that we've got that dull, lifeless sort of look to the photo. You could leave it there. That's kind of the preset. That's kind of the edit. But what we're going to do now is pull this whole thing together with some adjustments, which is really going to make this stand out a lot more. So the first thing I like to do is sort out the sky. You could do a select sky subject where you just select the sky and it does it all together. But I like to use the gradients because it gives it more of a natural fade in to the effects that you're putting on. So let's go from the brightest side, which is this side. We'll pull it right over, because obviously this is really thin over here, so it's not really going to affect anything, so I won't worry about that. But always minus subject if you don't want to affect the car. And there you go, look, it's going to put an effect around it, so it won't affect it. From there, I'm just going to darken that sky and bring those highlights back in. So we'll pull the highlights all the way down again. And then I'm trying to darken that sky to a... You need to watch the edges, because the edges is what's going to be affected the most. If I just did all of it like that, it'd look a bit dodgy. So we're just going to get the edges to where it's just about too much, and then we'll leave it there. And then I'll actually leave this shadow here. You see this right side of the car, it's got a bit more shading, but I quite like it. It gives it a bit of contrast. So we've got the light side on the right, dark on the left. And then what I'm going to do from there is I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to use the brush. Normally I would just pull a linear gradient and then rub it out, but I can't be bothered. Let's just do this. So I'm going to rub this whole floor. Could you see if I can get rid of that actually? How can I? You see this floor here? This is really dark, but this is really light over here. Actually, yeah, I've just done that wrong. So this is what we want. This is what we don't want. You see how they're different shades? It looks a bit stupid. So we're going to sort out the back, not the front. So let me delete this. And then let's get a brush tool. Bosh. And then let's just brush. Let's zoom in first. Now let's brush. Bosh. Let's brush this road. Doesn't have to be perfect because it's got a bit of a gradient on these circle adjustments if you've got it set to the feather in like I have. So you can sort of get it in so it's just about a little bit there. Just about in. Cover a little bit of the car. And then what we can do is just get the eraser, make it really small, and just go over the edges if there's anything that's overspilt. Don't get too close to the edges though, but because otherwise you'll start rubbing it out. But that's that. And then we can now zoom out again so we can see what we're actually going to be doing. And now we just need to match it to the front, to a realistic level. So we'll go about there, but we need to zoom in again because as you can see, the gradient hasn't done it quite as good, because with the one that I use, you have to like rub on that spot for a certain amount of seconds, and then it will like put more intense shading onto it. So we'll just quickly match that in. The areas that are a little bit lighter, merge all that together. Now when we zoom out, that road should be nice and flush. Yeah, it is, look, there's a little bit there, but okay, fine, I'll do it. If you're judging me, I will fix it. Give me a second. Tiny bit there. Now when we look, we've got that nice dark road with the car on it as well. If you wanted to, you could go to the car and do this little trick that I do sometimes if it's got nice details, but I kind of like the shadows on this. But another little tip that I do is select the subject. Yes, because the road is the subject. Let's get rid of the road, hold on. Let me erase this, I don't want that. Cool, right, so I get the subject of the car. What I like to do, because if you just brought the exposure down, right, the car would just get darker and you wouldn't see any of the shadows. But then if you boosted it up to try to see the shadows, you'd get that. But then if we just lift the shadows on their own all the way up, we get that. So what I like to do is merge the two together, you counter them. So I want to bring the exposure down and keep it dark, but I also want to show all those details like that in the grille. Well, I would, but I don't want to in this photo, but normally I would with cars that are out in a bit more brighter locations. So you lift the shadows up to about there, where you can see the details that you want, which is normally the grille. And then from there, you get the exposure and you counter that shadow with the exposure. So look where we're at now, we're at -90 on the exposure, and you can still see the shadows lifted up and the interior of the car. Whereas if we got rid of those shadows and just did the exposure on its own, well, now we'll just have a dark car, do you know what I mean? So you want to use those two together. I always put them opposite ways, and you can really lift the shadows, but also bring back the detail without having it like that. So you can just pull it down and control it back to a realistic level. But I'm not going to do that for this photo, so I'm going to scrap that. I like the shadows because it makes this one look cooler. But yeah, that is it. That is how you get a World War II style image on your car photos, or just on a landscape photo in general. It doesn't have to be a car, but I just tend to shoot cars. So yeah, you can use this on everything, or you can wait for my preset pack, which is coming out probably the end of next week. I need to refine a couple of things. You're gonna get 25 presets, 5 different categories. Yeah, it's a big one. I'm looking forward to it. Make sure you subscribe, follow me on Instagram. It's all linked below. My first preset pack's down there as well if you want that. And yeah, that is it. It's been an editing tutorial. Thank you very much for watching. Yeah, I'll let you know that my desk can move by pressing this, and that can be your outro. I'll leave a video here that I think you should go watch. I'll put this video there. Go watch this video. It's very good. See you later.